Come back to the program. Now, later on the show, we're going to talk a bit about the World Cup. Morocco made it to the quarterfinals. The only African team still standing. How far can it go? Can it go beyond just the quarterfinals? We'll be talking about that very, very soon. But now we're looking at Tinubu, the presidential aspirant from Nigeria, who's bidding to become the next president. We're asking, do you think he has what it takes to become the president of Nigeria? We're asking this question because just before we went on a break, we played you a clip of interactions between Tinubu himself and the press at Chatham House. Now, before we went on the break, I was saying this, right? The likes of myself and my colleagues, whenever Western media portray African leaders, in particular, in a certain way, we're quick to respond. A few years ago, the former UK Prime Minister David Cameron referred to Nigeria as being fantastically corrupt. And of course, we then saw Cameron himself in a very compromised situation where he texted the now Prime Minister for favors. So who is really corrupt? Or is not just peculiar to the continent of Africa? However, when you have a presidential aspirant who wants to become the next leader within international space, and he's being posed questions from his own people and some other international broadcasters or journalists, then he decides to delegate questions. It comes to question about the type of leadership he possesses or he would be exhibiting if he does indeed become the next president. We are streaming live on Facebook. Make sure you leave your comments on there. And whilst you're there, make sure you share. Get people involved. Let's start talking. Now, joining us right now to talk about this particular subject is Julius Baluto, who's a journalist and also editor of A Former East Africa. Julius, thank you very much for joining us. Always a pleasure to have you. Yeah. Now, like yourself, you're no stranger to Chatham House. And of course, when our leaders, rarely do we get opportunity to pose questions to them. But when it comes to Chatham House, you do get the opportunity. Let me ask you, first and foremost, your reaction about Tinubu.
For the many times I've been to Chatham House, I found out that it didn't matter whether it was a president, whether it was a prime minister. When a question was directed to you, you always answered. You never had to delegate. And even though you came with a delegation who are experts in such fields, they always wanted to hear, what does the president say? What does a future or prospective president to be say? So it's not a question of, it's your turn, question has been posed to you, then you say it's going to be answered by A, B, C, and you didn't prepare them, just picking them out random, just like that. It's pretty tricky. It was very interesting to watch.
What does this say about the type of leaders that we have, as a people, Julius?
Whenever we talk about Nigeria, I've seen in many cases Nigerians in the West being let down by their presidents, Nigerian in the diaspora. Remember the scams of 419.
Yes.
Remember how Nigeria has been perceived in the Western world as a corrupt country. But when you come to the Western countries, when you come to UK, when you go to US, as a president, you should be the ambassador for your country, for your people. It is your opportunity to showcase them in a positive light. You don't come to confirm how bad they are seen. I'll give you an example. Way back, we had the president of Nigeria, Buhari. He came to London at a time whereby there was a narrative of a lot of people, seeing, Nigeria, corruption was made in Nigeria. And when he was challenged, what do you think about your people? He says, their problem, they are so corrupt. You're confirming to the Western world what they always thought about your people. It's not good, because it's not every Nigerian who is corrupt. It's not good. It's not also the reality of Nigerians in these Western countries. And even on the ground in Nigeria, it's not everybody who is corrupt. So it is unfair to be painted with one brush, be seen as one thing, a bunch of corrupt people from east to west, north to south of the country of Nigeria. So Buhari never did favor to Nigerians. The time also he came. Do you remember when there was a massive scandal of David Cameron talking to the Queen, telling the Queen of England Nigerians
Fantastically corrupt. Yes.
It was
yes.
a time he was supposed to come and say, "Hey, not every Nigerian is corrupt." But he came and he never addressed that issue. He seemed to be happy and satisfied.
You know, UiPath.
It's very interesting. So this leader now, Tinubu, we are seeing typically that kind of mentality, that mindset. It's like you're back in Nigeria, you're like, okay, I'm a bit tired, you pick up that question, you pick up that question, and you as well. No, the question was to him. Why? Because in this particular platform, global platform of Chatham House, people want to see him showcase what kind of presidential candidate, what kind of skills he has, what knowledge he has. So for him to delegate that question is like, they wouldn't see that from him.
Well, one thing I found interesting was his strategic communication director. And he tried to more or less defend Tinubu, saying that, this is kind of a strategic way of Tinubu showing great leadership, showing that it's all about teamwork, which I thought was really, it was nonsensical, to be honest with you. So many times we've heard when African leaders sign trade deals and we've seen how it only benefits one side. And you always ask the questions, don't our leaders read these type of contracts? Don't our leaders read these agreements? Don't our leaders understand what is being put forward to them? Because the people struggling at the end of the day are the citizens. And am I wrong in suggesting that this is a clear exhibition of what some people perceive to happen within those contract rooms?
I don't think historically I've seen the idea of teamwork being illustrated at an international scene. I have never seen it. Yeah, and if this is a question of showing us how teamwork works, it didn't work there. Because number one, when you look into who the world wants to see is Tinubu. You are the guy on spotlight. You are the one who came to speak. The Western world wants to see what kind of a leader you may be. They want to see what skills you have. They want to see what knowledge you have to at least know, you are knowledgeable about the subjects. And presidential candidate should be all-round most of the time.
Yes.
You should be all-rounder. Before you're given a platform to speak, most of the time you need to have been spoken with your experts in all different areas, so that when you stand at least you can showcase an opinion based on how you were informed by your team. But if teamwork matters in this case, I just want to say it didn't work, because teamwork should have been happening, briefing, giving the president a brief, writing a speech which captures all these ideas or things, so that when he is challenged, you'll be able to know what to say without them having to help. So in this aspect, teamwork didn't work.
And of course, to our viewers and listeners, if you're watching us on Facebook, do share your comments, all right? I will read them out. If you have any questions as well, do let us know, because this is very important. And the fact that it's Nigeria as well makes it even more very, very important for us to discuss. Now, in terms of Nigeria as a country, I've been watching what people are saying, particularly with this, which I would describe as a fiasco. And it's just been comical from top to bottom. It's been comical. Will this at all, because we know that it's election time and a lot of these things are electioneering, you could forgive him for maybe overpromising, but to literally avoid questions directly at him to give to other people to answer, more or less doing his job for him. Does this strike any confidence in you at all?
I'll say this. I would judge Tinubu by his lack of answering questions to the international media. Sometimes politicians from Africa do that to avoid controversy. Most of the time, they are trying also to not want to speak if they don't have all the full details. But when you come on the ground in Africa, you may just find he's a better candidate than Buhari. Yeah, so if you compare Tinubu with Buhari, I would say Buhari is tired. He just need to retire. It's my opinion.
So in that case, then what is
the best candidate in Nigeria? Therefore, maybe what happens at the international scene may not be so relevant right now than in Africa. So. Yeah, so he has a following though in Nigeria.
Yes, he does. And I don't know, maybe we're doing a bit of, we're being disingenuous and maybe in our approach to critically analyze his performance like this, by what you're saying.
I think whenever it comes to platforms on which these candidates stand before they speak, there will be very many, and not just one. So today you may have failed to answer questions. Tomorrow you may stand in another place and well prepared. You'll answer the questions. But perhaps, I don't know whether you worked in human resources management in the Western world. And you thought when you are applying for a job, you want to say you're a very good team player. And you wanted to show us how it was.
Well, our friend and also colleague Priscilla Nwikpo had the opportunity to actually put some questions to Tinubu, which has gone viral. So if you haven't seen it yet, I would recommend it to you for you to go online and search for it. He asked him about his age and I think his identity more, and that went viral as well. It's important we talk about this, as I keep mentioning. If you're watching, make sure that you leave your comments on there and I will read them out. But I also want us to quickly touch on something here before we go, Julius. I know we're really pushing for time. But there's a story to do with Swiss-based mining company, Glencore, have been found to be involved in some sort of corrupt activities in DRC. And of course, we've had these conversations on multiple occasions to do with multinational companies exploiting, when it comes to the African continent.
Jonas, DR Congo is the size of Eastern Europe. It's a huge country with a lot of wealth, with a lot of resources. But since time immemorial, extraction of minerals on the ground in Congo has never been in the hands of Congolese people. What has been there has been exploitation. Yeah. And also the fact that there's been an endless war. And I see the war as a factor for the fight over the resources on the ground. When you look into the fight over the resources on the ground, when you look into also the Ebola, which never goes away, I always make a joke, say, Ebola will leave Congo when the African government in Congo will be in hold of the country and control the wealth of the nation so that it's properly in the hands of the Congolese people and the other ones in control. So what's happening with this particular company, I think, is a very good thing, whereas you cannot just come and do mining and you exploit the resources in the country, you run away, you keep the money. I like the idea that Congolese government is now having to make them pay. And they have to compensate. Of course, I saw it's not just that. There's another, somewhere else I read, over 1 billion has been compensated so far. Yeah. So it's a step in
the right direction. So Glencore will pay DRC $180 million. They've actually agreed to make that payment. Why? Because they actually paid some people on the ground for preferential treatment. And this is something that has been ongoing. In the end, it is the people that do suffer. Anyway, we're still looking at issues surrounding the continent of Africa. There's a quick report I just want us to listen to give us an update as to what's been happening across the continent of Africa. The Libyan National Oil Company has called on foreign companies active in the hydrocarbon sector to resume exploration and production operations, citing an improved security situation. The National Oil Company calls on international companies operating in the oil and gas sector with whom agreements for exploration and production of oil and gas have been signed to lift the force majeure invoked on their side. The national oil companies explained that it launched its appeal after having carried out an assessment on the security situation and noted a dramatic improvement in some sites where it was difficult to operate. A court in Mozambique has sentenced the son of a former president and others to prison for their role in the tuna bonds corruption scandal. Ex-President Armando Guebuza's son, Dambi Guebuza, and 2 former heads of intelligence each received 12 years behind bars. 8 of their co-accused were convicted and sentenced to between 10 and 12 years. According to the judge, the crimes committed have brought consequences whose effects will last for generations. A total of 19 people had been charged with blackmail, embezzlement, and money laundering over their alleged roles in Mozambique's biggest financial scandal. The scandal involved the country borrowing more than $2 billion from international banks, much of it without the knowledge or approval of the country's parliament, triggering an economic crisis. The Church of Pentecost in Ghana has cautioned its members against the production and the sale of items harmful to the spiritual, mental, and physical health of others. The church stressed that members must not deal in harmful items such as alcohol, cigarettes, and narcotic drugs, among others. The church said to its members in their business endeavors to make all their dealings and transactions Bible-based, honest, and transparent. The church also reiterated that it frowns on premarital sex and marital infidelity, and that persons found culpable be punished by suspension and/or withdrawal from fellowship. The Nigerian Communications Commission, the NCC, has warned of the potential harm of participating in some TikTok video challenges, saying they could expose devices to information stealing malware. An advisory shared on Tuesday by the NCC's Computer Security Incident Response Team said hackers had taken advantage of a viral TikTok challenge known as the Invincible Challenge to disseminate an information-stealing malware called the Wasp Stealer. According to the advisory, the malware may be capable of covertly collecting screenshots, video recordings, or the ability to activate any connected camera or microphone. It added that personally identifiable information, including names and passwords, keystrokes from emails, chat programs, website visited, and financial activity may also be harvested by the malware secretly monitoring user behavior. TikTok is the 9th most popular social media app in Nigeria, but has largely escaped the attention of regulatory authorities. With this report that you just heard, and 2 particular stories that stuck out to me to do with the fact that the Pentecostal church actually telling its congregation to stay away from selling, alcohol and cigarettes and so forth. And for me, actually reading that report, what came to mind was, what if an individual owns, a convenience shop, a supermarket, and this individual has, beers and so on and so forth? What are they supposed to do? And plus, Indonesia. So make sure you take notes, all right? Sex before marriage is illegal. Well, will take effect within years. But we must move on. And moving on indeed is the World Cup 2022. Things are actually getting exciting now. And it's actually refreshing once again to talk about activities on the pitch rather than external issues. So Morocco appears to be the only African country left at this year's World Cup. Yes, they've booked their place in the quarterfinals, which they will play Portugal. The question we're asking today is, can Morocco go beyond the quarterfinals, make it to the semifinals, and become the first African country? I know we haven't started yet, but, it's good to speak things into existence, right? And joining us to talk about this, my guest here is Maju. Maju, thank you once again for joining us. I know you came here last week and we spoke about the progress of African teams at this year's tournament. Your reaction, the fact that Morocco beat Spain to book their place in the quarterfinals?
I mean, my reaction as an African man, I'm truly happy. The fact that Morocco has gone through to the next stage. Me personally, I never saw that coming. So it was a very tactical game. I think the manager came with the right tactic, and for my surprising for Spain to come out the way they did, even in the terms of missing the penalties they did. It was a bit of a surprise, but I mean, congratulations to Morocco. That will not be taken away from them. Their game plan, the players were really motivated and they truly wanted to win that game. And it literally showed. I think God also was on their side. So
Absolutely.
that victory.
And, you know, as a West African, of course, it's never been easy when you watch Africa Cup of Nations and you watch these North Africans. Mind you, I don't even know whether I could classify Morocco as North African anymore because they do want to join the ECOWAS, which is the Economic Community of West African States. So I am claiming Morocco as a West African country. Right. But do you think, looking at the likes of Senegal, looking at the way that, you know, Ghana, even Cameroon play, what do you think has been a difference to do with Morocco?
I think the difference is, obviously, number one is the way the team set up. I think if you look at the Morocco setup and the other countries such as Senegal, Cameroon and Ghana as well, I think it was a different strategy Morocco applied in terms of actually going forward. I think if Senegal applied the same tactic or the same strategy against England, it would have been a different result. If also they had certain players that they were missing, such as Sadio Mane, I believe if he was there, it could have also been another game for the English national team.
Now, I always say this, and we do say it a lot when it comes to, you know, international games in particular. And in as much as a lot of the African players, you know, play across Europe, when it comes to international games, I think what we tend to find is just that little bit of quality, which I felt was missing with the game with Senegal and England. And looking at the Moroccan team now, do you think they like that, or you think that little bit of quality is there to help them progress?
No, I think in terms of quality, I believe Morocco has definitely got the quality in terms of the final third of the pitch. When we talk about the players such as Hakim, the Chelsea winger, for example, all those players are players that they can bring the extra bit of quality needed in terms to push them forward. It was a prime example against Spain, for example. You can see that they have also the quality to move forward.
All right, now we are in England, so we have to talk about England. Even though some of us might prefer to talk about the African teams, we can't just spend the whole time talking about Morocco. They've booked their place in the finals. But before I come to England, what do you think would be crucial for Morocco? I mean, we've seen Portugal. We saw Portugal played against Ghana. We've seen Portugal with and without Ronaldo. Would you prefer Morocco meeting Portugal with Ronaldo or without Ronaldo?
I mean, personally, I feel, even without Ronaldo, it wouldn't make as much difference because we saw the game against, who did they play against? Switzerland.
Yeah.
I mean, Ronaldo didn't play, but the young player that played from Benfica, you can see has so much quality. I mean, for first time appearance in the World Cup, he did really well. So Morocco playing against Portugal without Ronaldo, it wouldn't make as much difference because Portugal have a really strong team. I believe that, they might also be the favourite for the World Cup as well.
Now, the biggest game right now coming up on Saturday, England and France. And of course, some people already started singing that it's coming home. Looking at the way England have been playing, what do you think? They got enough to beat France, or France is just unstoppable? I mean, you look at Mbappe. Mbappe now is 5 goals.
No, I believe England can perform, can actually get to the final, but I believe this game will be a tough one for them in terms of tactically, because the French team are also looking strong. But if England can come with the right mindset, with the right strategy in terms of how not to go there defensively, because if we look previous back into the other tournaments, the English team are more used to defending against, let's say, a stronger opponent. For example, when they played the Euros against Italy, England, their approach was a much more defensive approach.
Yes.
So that's why they were able to lose the game, because there was conceding a lot of pressure. So if they can approach it in a different way, it will allow them, the other players, the opportunity to express themselves.
And finally, about Maguire. There's been a lot of negative press about him. Just putting him on the spot here. Do you think he has more or less redeemed himself so far? I think touch with anything else happens in the game against France.
No, I think Maguire's redeemed himself because internationally, playing for England national team, I think he does really well. And he just needs the right player beside him that can understand his way of play, that can get the best out of Maguire. I think all this criticism is not really so well towards the player. I believe his approach, his focus, is doing him really well.
You can tell you're a football coach because you're looking at things from a different perspective to that of fans. Fans just look at the game for what it is, and if you don't perform, if you're not doing the right things, then hey, it's see ya. Finally, the game against Portugal and Morocco.
Me personally, I would
prediction.
I would like Morocco to win. As an African man, I'm definitely backing Morocco to win on that. But I believe it's a game where if Morocco can approach it the same way they did against Morocco against Spain.
Against Spain, yeah.
So I believe it will be a game where the best team who shows a lot more passion, a lot more desire, they'll be the one to win the game.
Okay. Maju Kinona, thank you very much for joining us. I know you're a football coach. And thank you, the viewer and listener, for staying tuned. We're done for today, but as always, all being well, we'll be back here next week. Thank you very much for staying tuned, and don't forget to spread the word. Talk Africa is back every Wednesday, 7 p.m. on Channel 7. Until then, see you next week.
Talk Africa.